Hey, Štěpán, how are you doing tonight? You're on mute at the moment. No worries. There you go. All right, how
Uh,
you doing?
Perfect start. I said I'm doing great, and what about you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. I'm enjoying the almost the beginning of my Memorial Day weekend here for people in the U.S. So get a chance to have a nice long weekend, and I'm taking Monday off, so looking forward to that. But I'm also excited to see some new things that have recently changed for the API for Power BI this week, as we've been talking about. So I think this is going to be a good topic today. Just as a brief mention, I did see a couple people in the comments hoping to get a quick explanation of what the REST API is. So I think that will definitely be good to kind of go over a little bit today as we started off. But from your perspective, I would love if you want to give a little introduction about yourself. And kind of who you are. I know you were on a couple weeks ago for talking about the report T, which I will still again mention is my favorite educational tool now for Power BI. I've actually told a couple clients about that, but I'd love to hear a little bit from you about yourself.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Štěpán Rešl. I'm from Prague in the Czech Republic, which is a small country in the middle of the Europe. I'm the co-founder of a company called DataBrothers and author of a blog, Jakna Power BI.cz, which could be translated into How to Power BI. But I'm sorry for everyone who doesn't understand the Czech language because this blog is completely in Czech. But I'm trying preparing some stuff also inside in English, and I'm posting this stuff on a GitHub, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And as you read, I'm the Microsoft most valuable professional in a data platform, specialized in a Power BI. And mostly I'm inside the Power Query because I completely love this language. And because of that, I prepared some open source GitHub resources that you can find on a GitHub, and anyone can use it also. So I think that would be all about me. And I think we can jump right into the topic.
I'd love that. Yeah,
What do you
let's do
think?
that then. There you are.
Uh, Wonderful. Thank you so much for changing the screen. In this moment, you should be able to see the very easy report. The report that is showing some statistics. And statistics about very easy game that has been produced from Agent 008. If you don't know her, let's try to find her on a Twitter. It's the MVP. Oh, sorry. She is not MVP in this moment because she joined the Microsoft, but she originally was, and she prepared very nice game that's called Power BI Cards with a cooperation with Catherine from Germany. We're using these cards to, let's say, elaborate education of a Power BI for our employees, for our Power BI developers. This game prepares for you 3 cards on Power BI topic for every single day, and you can try to answer them in some time. We are gathering these informations and presenting it inside this report. And why we went into this story and even in this type of education, because we want to make it fun and more exciting. But even after the report was prepared, we find out that no one is really opening it, and they're not competing each other. Uh, so we was looking for a way how to receive the data that Power BI prepared for us, because as we all use the Power BI, we know that it can compare data, transform it, and prepare, let's say, anything. So why to be preparing these data on a two places if it can be prepared just once. And luckily, in August 2021, so a year ago, we received something that was called Power BI REST API support for DAX queries. And it was just a small part of a bunch of news that comes in the August. And through this endpoint that was added into the Power BI REST API, you should be able to receive DAX queries. So we went to try it. Originally, it was prepared just for someone who has the consent of a dataset, who is able to modify it. And originally, it was mostly for PowerShell. But no, not everyone is using PowerShell, not everyone knows its syntax, so we've tried our way, as always. So we tried to bring it into the Power Automate, because if it's using just a really simple REST API, like a Power BI REST API, it can be called like any other HTTP endpoint. So by just a few calls, we tried to gather these DAX queries against our data set that is under the report itself. And the DAX query is very easy. It's just evaluate values from one table. So yeah, very easy DAX query at the end of the day. And because because we needed to call it from Power Automate, we needed to call it as a service principal. After this story, I will get how you can generate these stuff, etc. So don't get bored too much quickly.
So just one quick question, if you can summarize in like a couple words, what is a REST API? We have one person who's not sure what a REST API is.
Okay. REST API is application interface that allows you to send a request inside this interface, and it will translate your question that you make against this interface to the server, receive the answer, and returns you the answer. And this API can have a very different type of authorization. So it can be sure if user is going to receive the answer or the application. And
exactly. Yep. And like, yeah, pretty much everything has it. Like Power BI has a REST API where you build a query, you ask it a question, it sends you information back. That can be accessing bits of the data set, that can be accessing parts of the tenant. That is like, hey, I want to know user statistics. It's basically, it's giving you some type of information output. Google has an API where you can request data from it. Twitter has an API, REST API as well. You can access to pull data out. It's basically, it's going from language A to language B, and it's an endpoint connection that lets you withdraw data from some system.
Exactly. And every website which we are using is running on APIs. Even the Power BI service, how I can show anyone. But let's go back into the solution.
Yep.
After this query, we want to receive the data, distribute to people, so they will not have to go into the Power BI service, finding the report and finding their position, because what we want for them was that we want to make a competition from this education. And we were able to do it by the adaptive cards. Adaptive card is something that come up from Microsoft, and it's a small component that can be delivered into mostly any system, inside Outlook, Messenger, Teams, whatever. And they are dynamic. They can really adapt to what you're sending inside. On adaptivecard.io, you can find a bunch of documentation and samples that you can just reuse. as we did, because we knew nothing about adaptive cards before we start this demo. So we tried to prepare the first adaptive card, which would be sent to exact user after their completion. I will switch it just for now to email address of this account to show you how the result will look like. Yeah, I will just test it as the manual point, and I will go into the themes, and you can see that PowerAutomate is just sending me the results of every single user inside very small card. So they don't have to go into Power BI service. It's delivered right to them.
And it's formatted in a way too that's definitely nicer than just like a string of text. It's organized. It's like, it's a multi-value card with a header, bolded row titles and everything else. So I've not explored the cards that much, but I like that I guess like the Microsoft chat feed interfaces in Teams has the option to, I'm guessing in the Power Automate, you build out what goes into the header, what goes into the row title, what goes into the row value. You have to probably build it out, but you can design it in a way that makes it very readable within, I'm guessing, a button to probably click you maybe back to the report or a workspace or something. Yeah.
Exactly. You can prepare here buttons to send you anywhere. In this moment, it's sending me back into the Power app where I can find the Power BI cards. But unfortunately, I'm opening it on the account that is not PowerApps licensed. So sorry for it, you're not able to see in this way, but if you give me just a quick moment, I will show it from a different perspective. But as you mentioned, that inside adaptive cards, it's just up to developer how everything will look like. If it will be bold, if it will be structured to the left side, how much will be there. Okay, now it's rendering finally. So I have here the Power BI cards, and I can just go and open any card I want and try the test on my own. But that was just about the demo of what you can do with this endpoint. And if I would go back into the Power Automate, you can find out that it wasn't really straightforward.
Yeah.
You would need to do many calls before. Okay, I'm kidding. You would need just the 2 calls, just the OAuth and the query itself. But I was also gathering the max number of users. So it just depends on how you want to use it. But since this week, and I think we saw the news on a Power BI blog, and there was incredible amount of them for this week. And I think no one don't know where to look first. But there come up 2 very special articles about this exact endpoint. And I really want to show you, because this whole stuff can be changed into just 1, 2, 3, 4 calls inside the Power Automate.
Okay. It's nice when they update the tool to make things simpler, right? Yeah, I mean, just one other quick example, like field parameters. Being able to change a column now went from like super complex in a model to just like that. So it's really nice when they add Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari call it syntax sugar for DAX, but it's like software sugar. It's where you add this, this little like layer on the top that just makes a task that much easier.
I think the field parameters are absolute game changer, because even end user can prepare them easily without tabular editor, without anything, and they can understand them very quickly. And everyone was calling for them for a very long time. So I'm super happy that they are finally here.
Now, Štěpán, I do have one question from a user. This may or may not get solved with your updated solution, but I'll pop it onto the screen here. So how are you getting the bearer token? Are you using service principals, or have you managed to get it via the Azure Active Directory or OAuth 2 without the need for service principals?
In this moment, in the solution that you are able to see, I'm generating OAuth token. So I'm generating full the OAuth stack, and I'm receiving the OAuth token through service principal. But the news that come are able to do this for you. You doesn't have to call it through the service principal. And even more, maybe I will just, for a quick moment, I will open just, Sorry, I will just open some limitations before we jump into what and how. Because every time
that'll be great.
You
I love this.
Every time you have to have in your mind that you're using some kind of REST API endpoint, and all these endpoints have their own limitations that you have to allow, or you will receive an error. This exact endpoint has these 4 main limitations. The call that you are preparing against the dataset can return you only up to 100,000 rows or 1 million values. And it doesn't matter which of these two will be fulfilled first. Once one of them is fulfilled, you will receive the error. So you have to count how many values or rows you will be receiving before you're providing these calls.
I have a great analogy for that for people who have not done an API call. Is that there's a similar type of limitation. So if you've ever done enter data in Power BI, the enter data button, it has a similar limit of it's either number of rows or number of values. There's a limit of both, but it's basically like the number of unique tuples, for technical term, or cells in your grid. There's a maximum of that. So if you have a really wide table, you might only be able to have 100 rows. If you have a really tall table and narrow, you could maybe have like 3,000, or in this case, but it's total number of unique values that can possibly come through. And that this has a, 100,000, 1 million, whichever comes first.
Yeah. So thank you for that, because it's absolutely the same here. So I think I will be using this interpretation since now also, because it never come up in my mind like that. But also you can provide just one DAX query against the dataset per call. So you can provide more evaluate calls against the dataset in one call, and you have to separate it into different ones. And also there's one limitation that I think it's not a real limitation, because I was trying very hard and I wasn't able to meet it, and it is that you can provide just up to 120 queries per minute. So it's 2 queries per second. I wasn't able to do it.
Okay.
Someone maybe will, so the limitation is there also. And there's one more limitation that was inside the documentation since this endpoint arrived. And this limitation is that you're not able to query dataset with row-level security by service principal. So it means if you are not using service principal for the authorization, but you're using the user token, you're able to receive data from the dataset. But there wasn't a way since this week how to do it. Since this week, we are really able to call dataset as a different user. So we can impersonate a user and be able to see what he will be seeing in a dataset if we will try to open the dataset. So this endpoint can be also used as testing, as a test space, because if you're not sure what someone is seeing inside the dataset, you can provide the administrator call against the dataset as this user and be able to see it.
Quick question for you,
And
just based off of now that we're talking about users. So Matthias wants to know, is this for premium only, or is this is there any pro configurations that allows you to use the API?
I think this is the absolutely best of this whole endpoint, because you can use it even as a free user. You doesn't have to have a premium or pro. You can use it even on your own workspace. So my workspace can be also queried like this.
That's pretty nice. That's always one of those where it's like, I hate to tell you it's a premium only. Like premium per user at least is cheaper now, but it's nice when it's like, oh wait, this is available for anyone with a Power BI account.
So maybe we can try to set up some calls in this moment for ourselves, so I can show you how it can really look like in these days when it is much more easier, much more faster, and much more straightforward.
Love it.
Okay, I will go to my flows and set up a new flow. Let's in this moment say that it will be instant flow, but it can be also automated or scheduled. So manually triggered flow, let's create it. I will not be setting up the names in this moment, but I will directly go into the next step and try to filter for Power BI. Inside the Power BI, you are able to find out two news actions. Run a query against the dataset and run a JSON query against the dataset. It's up to you if you want to set up everything inside the JSON as it was before for yourself, or you can call it very easily from this small window. And have you and are you able to see that there's no diamond? Even this action is not a premium. So you even doesn't need to have the Power Automate Premium to be able to do these calls. So E3 license can easily be now receiving any data from Power BI datasets with no offer. And really, with no offer.
That gets another one. That's very nice to be able to have that for any. Also, just honestly to be able to test it. You know, like sometimes it's well, I don't want to have to pay for like a license, or maybe like I tried Power Automate Premium last year. I don't have a trial license I can turn on at this point, so it's nice to be able to test this stuff in any environment without having to break out the wallet.
And for this, as you said, you don't need it because it's already inside the plastic license. So I will open in this moment the workspace called Power BI Cards. That's a workspace where we are storing the data set with the report that I showed you before. I will select the data set that I want to be querying. And first of all, I will start with Power BI Cards report itself, not with a row-level security. We will get into this topic right after it. Inside the Power BI Cards leaderboards, I can set up my query. And because I really don't remember the name, I can go inside the data set, show a table, find any table that I need, like zaměstnanci. I'm sorry, the zaměstnanci isn't a Czech word for employees.
Ah, gotcha.
I will just copy it from here, go there and evaluate zaměstnanci. If I will try to test it, what I will be receiving. Okay, just quick a moment. Leaderboards, cards, yeah, data sets. Sorry, T is missing.
UATE, almost.
Yeah.
Evaluate. There you go.
So another try of a call, and it was very fast. You're receiving the answer very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first table rows, you can see that I'm receiving the table name, column name inside the brackets, and the answers. And I'm receiving every single one who is inside my data set. So just one call, not a three, not a four.
I know, right?
No inside. Very easy.
It's really nice to be able to that easily fetch the data out, and then I'm assuming at that point easily spit it into a card and other outputs as you desire. But I think we talked about it, but I can't recall if it was mentioned. The permission for the person connecting in this workspace needs to be at least a member level, correct?
You need to have, if I would go inside the data set and hit the share button, you need to have the build content permission.
Okay.
Once you have the build content permission, you're able providing these scores.
So I have a technical person in the chat, which is great. Rafal, if I'm saying your name correctly, but I'm popping your question onto the screen again. So is this JSON document, is it JSON array? And do the labels repeat in every record?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's JSON array. And yeah, everything that you're receiving is a bunch of properties, JSON properties with the attributes. So from the answer, you have to be able to gather them.
Yep.
And there's one thing that we were able to see after the call, that, as I mentioned, we have a name of a table and name of a column. The name of a table is not really great. I would be much more happy to have there just the name of a column. And there, to be able to receive just the name of a column, we have to go into the documentation of ExecuteQuery, where you can find out that if you are receiving from a data set direct column, so any column is called directly, we will be receiving it with a name of a table. But if it's modified column, it's returning just with his new name. So what if I slightly change the query to select columns And I will now, just for a quick, be receiving the emails. And because, as I mentioned before, I don't remember it, I will go into, yeah, it's the same. Okay. Grab the email. Inside, and let's try to call it once again. Because select columns is selecting just an exact column that we want and renaming it, so it's modified column for this endpoint. So we should be able to receive just an email without the table name in the start. So by this, we can set up any column we want into the select columns and be able to receive them in a much more nicer way. And for me, it would be even nicer to have them without the bracket. But once we received it inside the JSON, how we can get them from it? I will now switch to the PowerPoint presentation once again, because there are some type of calls that can be done against what we are receiving from Power BI, from Power BI REST API. There are 4 different types of outputs that we can call. First, just a Power Automate function outputs with a name of a step would receive the entire response of an API. Once we will add the body / the first table rows, we will be able to see exactly what we were seeing here inside the response. So we will be receiving it inside this square bracket. If we want to receive some exact row from the returned table, we can set it up into another part of a row. And if we want to receive exact value from it, we can call it also, but between we have to set up a whole name of a part inside the JSON. So because of this, let's say generate the table from the answers, because we can do the HTML create table from the answers. I will just use the first table row into the HTML table and just say test. Power Automate will automatically find what's inside and will really generate the table itself. So it's very easy in this moment.
That's pretty nice. Comparatively to like what it was before, like it's there's you know, you got to touch the code a bit, but it's much simpler.
Yeah, it is. But now the shade part. If I want to remove the brackets inside the name, I really have to change it. So I have to go inside the compose of this data operation inside the HTML table, and I will call function replace. For a replace, I will drop the output from HTML, and I will set to it that I want to remove this bracket and also another one. Replace, and this here's yeah. And this should return the table as I would like to see it. So it should be without, if I would go into the HTML, without the square brackets around. So in this moment, I can, let's say, modify and send it through the email. And in this moment, I will open complete flow that I've prepared for it. So I have there the list, generate list of projects from portfolio without the assignee that are not okay. That's something that I can show you how it look like. I would go inside. Sorry. I will just quickly find it. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, here it is. So, it's this report that shows the projects inside the portfolio that has some kind of assignee, are assigned for a specific department, etc. And I just want to generate from this report the list of projects inside the portfolio that doesn't have assignee and even that are not in an OK, so I have to deal with it. And I have to deal with it very fast. So by one very easy call, I'm receiving from the portfolio report the answer where it's also generating the link where I can set it up the assignee. I'm receiving the count, styling the table by a classic CSS because we can send the Outlook email that could be able to modify by them, and I can send it.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah. Permission. Yeah, run the flow. Done. And if I would go inside the email, I've just received email with very easily generated table with all the projects that are without the assignee that are not okay. So I have there every single status, and I can see if they're close to the end or to start, and I can deal with them. So that's something that can be built with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just 6 steps in this moment. And if I wouldn't want to have the exact number, how much of them is in this moment inside the email, it would be even about 1 less. So I would be able to remove this one. And that is just returning me the count of the summarize of these projects. So that's just a first few ways how to really use this endpoint. But what I need to set up before, if you want to really be using this endpoint, you have to go into the tenant settings and be sure that you have enabled the dataset execute query by REST API. I would strongly recommend it not to enable it to everyone, but just for a specific security group. So you will be sure that only the allowed one are able to provide these calls. And if you want to be using this endpoint by a service principal, you don't have to forget on one another settings that is service principal. No, allow service principals to use Power BI REST API. With these two setups, you can be calling against these data sets anytime by service principals or by exact users that are allowed to do these calls very easily. If you don't want the service principals be used in your tenant, you can disable it or just set it up on a security groups, as is recommended there. And I would recommend it also because you never know what someone can do with your service principal behind your back.
Quick question. So what they wanted to know what are some of the defaults for those tenant settings. Just to be clear on that.
Both are disabled as a default in this moment. And I think they will be every time defaultly disabled because I would never set it up in a customer tenant or any other tenant will be publicly used. And every time I would recommend to set it up on specific group. The tenant which you are seeing where I'm testing it is just really test tenant where I just don't want to mess with the service principals.
Perfect.
Okay, and now maybe to row level security. As I mentioned before, let's say on the start of all that we've been preparing there, I've mentioned that by service principle, you are not allowed to do these calls against the data set. We can test it. Why not? You will be able to see what answer you will be receiving back. But I will need to grab the endpoint. So dataset ID, I will drop it into the Postman and I will show it to you in a second. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Authentication. Yep. And I can go back finally. Here inside the Postman, I have the call against the data set, and here should be employees because it's a change data set. Where if I would provide them call as the service principal, I would be received an error that I'm not authorized, even that I've generated the bearer token few seconds before. So really, if you would try to provide these calls as service principal, so against the dataset with row level security that has its turn on, you will be receiving just this type of error. But you can do it as a user directly inside the Power Automate. I would go back inside the Power Automate as we were there. I will drop the compose and even the select columns, etc. I will call the employees. That should be the table, yeah, inside the Power BI cards row level security. And I will test it up. Sorry, didn't set up the right data set. Now. Manually. Run a flow.
Excellent.
Yep. And I'm able to receive the answer, but I'm receiving all the data because I'm calling it as the administrator of a workspace. And I mentioned that to be able to provide these calls, you need to have data build consent for the user or the service principal. So how can I apply the row level security against it? It's very easy because we never clicked on a show advanced options. Show advanced options allows you to not include nulls row. And I think there was a question in a chat before on this topic. If you would remove these, so you will set up them to be not included, then these nulls rows will not count into the limit.
And the full row will be removed. But if you had like let's assume a multi-column table, a grid, if you have a single cell that's empty, that cell does still count in the, probably, I was assuming a cell limit because it's still part of the shape. So it still has to pull in the metadata to understand it's like, you know, column A, row 5. That cell still has to exist as part of that extract.
Yeah, the cell will not exist for the extract, because even before, when I was calling the endpoint, I wasn't been receiving the whole data for everyone. There were some parts that were missing because I have now included in the node. But the thing that is more important is impersonate user.
Exactly. Yeah,
I
I
can
agree.
say here Joseph Chada, and I can provide call as him, even that he is not allowed to go inside the dataset. But the row level security is counting with him, so the output is really just for him. So by one more parameter, I can, as an administrator, be able to see what this person would be able to see inside the dataset, and I can verify. If I would try to provide this call against the dataset that hasn't row level security inside, the impersonate user will be automatically deleted from a call. So it doesn't matter if you provide this call against the dataset with row level security or not. So just if I will call this call against the dataset with no level security, I will receive all the data as in any other data set. So it will not be setting up any data, any row level security for you, luckily.
And I think, I mean, in general, that's very important to mention, because it's like you don't want to be able to impersonate someone else and take secure data with another user. So it's glad that roll up security, like, no. Yeah, you're only coming as yourself. You can't impersonate anybody else if there's RLS in the model.
Exactly. But do you remember how I mentioned that limitation about 1,000 rows? 100,000 rows, sorry. I think we both know the specific DAX call that can be, let's say, breaking this limit. Because there is one DAX function called top and skip, which allows you to skip part of the data and receive another part of the data. By chaining these type of calls, you can extract whole data set, but still you will need to recount or recount how many columns or rows you're about to gather from a data set. And to be honest, I've tried, and I've tried to receive about 3 million of rows from a data set, and I was waiting about a half an hour. Because,
that's a bit of time.
Yeah, that's quite a long. But I can understand it. You're trying to grab about 100,000 rows and push it through the endpoint somewhere else. And then you're trying to make it a file from it. And yeah, it's not really, how to say it, it's not really nice against the HTTP protocol itself. So I wouldn't recommending to doing it this way. There are much more cleaner way by XMLI endpoint, or by a new tool from SQL BI, by a Bravo. You can extract the data if you want, but through this endpoint, I wouldn't be doing it. If you want to extract just a small part of the data on or aggregated part of the data, it's wonderful. To be able to prepare the data-driven flows that the data are coming from a Power BI, it's wonderful also. If you want to be preparing, let's say, automatic tests against your data sets, where you want to be able to check if the control sums are fitting, then it's great also. You can prepare in, let's say, an Excel as the Microsoft shows us in the last article. I will just quickly drop inside because it's, yeah, here unlocking the new self-service. And you can see that they're also showing how to do it, that you can have one Excel with prepared tax queries by exact users, and you can be setting up the expected results. Or you can just test it on your own through or you can test it on your own by querying the original data set by Power Automate and just comparing these numbers if everything fits. So even for this purpose, this can be used very well. And now I have one more thing that I really need to set, and it totally blows me away. These connectors are not just inside the Power Automate. They are also inside the Logic apps. And they can be generated by your ARM or biceps templates directly for your other purposes. And why is blow me away? Because of the reporting. Because it's now much more sense to deliver users the responses very easily. And anyone can do it. So even if I would show you how it looked like inside the Logic app, you will be able to find the Power BI parts inside. You will just look inside, and there's the code that it's generating behind. So it's quite the same code that you seen before just by clicking, and it can be generated because it's originally using just the Power Automate inside the queries of a PBI source. And we're just setting up the path. So yeah, this is absolutely wonderful. And it makes Power Automate and Logic apps for these purposes absolutely same. Maybe Logic apps a little bit faster, but Power Automate may be a little bit cheaper, depends on how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I did have a question, one other follow-up question. So, can you include the TMSL in the query text field?
I think I would need to understand what TMSL means, because I'm sorry, I never heard this shortcut, if it's shortcut.
Sure. Yeah, the initialism. Yeah, if you want to spell that out a bit more, and then I can ask the question again here in a minute. And so they'll type it out in the chat. Ah, here we go. Got it.
Table model scripting language. Not in. That's a. I think not really. You can use only DAX queries in this moment. It's fully limited just on them, and no other calls can be done by it in this moment. But you can also, for your purpose of a call, be using even the variables. And I've completely forgot to mention it. So I will just drop inside. Yeah. As I showed you, you can use a classic evaluate call or the call with add columns, so you can prepare your own columns, or you can even prepare the variables inside, but you will still need to follow up how to prepare DAX queries.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be with a define and evaluate steps, etc. Or, as I mentioned, you can use a top and skip just to grab a part of the data or try to extract all of them.
I love it.
And
like somebody mentioned in the
think,
chat, I would say it's pretty easy to build out a script on kind of what you need to do, either using like DAX Studio, because that it has the query builder. So like if you need help building out the data query, you can use DAX Studio against that model and then basically, you know, kind of copy and paste it into here. So because like this is not the best, you don't want to write your query in here. You probably want to use DAX Studio to write it and script it and then paste it into here.
Or you can do it directly from a Power BI.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're going to probably use the performance analyzer, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah, that is a shortcut, because I mean you can take that. You have to know what to gut out because it does include a lot of extra stuff. But the core query, and maybe you can show a quick example of that. That is actually a good way to easily extract that data.
I will open the view with the performance analyzer, start the recording, just refresh the visuals to be able to find my shape. I would go for results, so statistic results call. Yeah, I can copy the query, open the notepad, and I can take from it just the part that I really need. So if I will go there, I can find out that there's the evaluate that I would need. It's a primary window that is connected to DSO core. So I can skip it up and say that I just want a DSO core without the primary window, and you can extract what you really need from core code that is already prepared for you.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is one of the easiest way how to really receive it if you don't know how to write the queries on yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Either, like I said, like either this way or using the drag and drop query builder in DAX Studio. Both work well to build out queries as needed.
Exactly. Yep. And I think that's all for this moment from this topic, because I think from this moment everyone knows how that they can use it directly from Power Automate with classic license. Doesn't have to need the premium. It can be used in Power BI with any license. And now I'm really interested in imagination of every single one, how they will use it, because I think it can bring very interesting stuff inside the Microsoft ecosystem.
I agree.
And I'm not sure if I should be saying that you're able to do it, but you can collect this endpoint directly from a data flow inside the Power BI service also. So you can prepare one data flow that is gathering data from others data set and collecting into the one. No, just forgot it. Never said that.
Oh yeah, like yeah, we'll scratch that one. But no, I think this is pretty incredible. The ability to like do the easy extractions, simplify that, has brought in I think a lot of additional degrees of freedom for being able to send automations and statuses. Even get to the point of creating cards and KPIs to people in the systems for updates and alerts and a lot of, I think, very useful ways to get any type of data out of here. And considering you can access the entire data model, there's many different things that I'm sure people can figure out ways to pull out of this. So like kind of like with field parameters, I'm curious to see what people come up with as they start to play around with these new connectors. Yeah, Paul's mentioning like lots of ideas for sending alerts.
Yeah, lots of alerts, and even if it will not take users into the Power BI, but it still will be taking data and the Power BI capabilities to the users.
Yep.
That's thing that I really love on it, because I know many managers that will never open Power BI report, but if it will just go directly to them, they will love it.
Exactly. Agreed. Yeah, this has been fantastic. Let me switch back over to this. I really appreciate you coming on to share this, and I'm glad that the timing worked out well for the announcement of this. I know you were saying that there was going to be some new stuff coming out related to this, and I do think that, going from complex to simple will make this at least degrees of freedom, it will make this more approachable for people who are wanting to explore this, because it's a built-in connector now. The complexity to me really comes in through writing the DAX code to shape your table, and we've seen there's a few options to do that, and then deciding kind of how you want to format the output, where you're going to put it into. But as far as the complexity of like a Power Automation goes, it's about as it's getting to be fairly simple as far as the like complexity of typical automate tasks go.
Yeah, and in this moment, it's, as you mentioned, easier, much more straightforward, and for anyone usable. Because before that, I met many companies that are not using service principals for these purposes, and they don't want to allow their service principals be inside a Power BI tenant because they are worried what would happen, and this just brings the capability for the users and for the Power users itself, and that's what I love on the Power Platform itself. It's really empowering the Power users.
Exactly. Yep. And I see a lot of people are just saying like there's many great ideas that can come out from this, especially around data-driven alerts. So I completely agree on those statements.
Yeah.
If there are any other questions left, please feel free to drop them in now, but otherwise we'll start to wrap up. Yeah, exactly. And I think in general, people, one other comment from Rafal is just mentioning that this week's just been full of new information. So much, so much new stuff with this, and then build, and last week was field parameters. So we ended this month with a bang for sure, with that new stuff coming out for the Power Platform.
I think I will need to take vacation for next week and just went through all the news that come into the Power BI world, because this week was a huge.
Exactly. But Štěpán, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate all of this, and yeah, it was great to have you back on again, and I'm sure we'll have you back on again at some point to do another technical dive into some other topics. I enjoy some of the more technical conversations, and just I certainly learned a new connector today, and it's nice when I get to add an additional tool in my tool belt for clients and everything. Let's see. I have one last question that I think is directed toward, it is directed towards you. So let me pop that onto the screen. Have you ever thought of teaming up or combining with Miguel Escobar's custom REST API connector?
I was thinking about it because inside one of my GitHub repository, I've prepared about 40 or somewhere between 40 and 50 custom functions to be able to receiving the Power BI REST API by M code. But what I know now, Miguel has so much work, and I don't want to bring him even more. So maybe someday, maybe not. We will see.
And then,
but
yeah, one last one from Didier. Is there a Swagger hosted somewhere to play with the API?
You can play with the Power BI REST API directly inside the Power BI inside the Microsoft doc, where should be. I hope it's already there. Oh, sorry. There were a small green button with a try me, and you could try to try these APIs on your own. But by some technicalities, it were removed, and hopefully we will be able to see it once again back. Maybe soon. We don't know. Hope so.
Excellent.
But
Perfect.
thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone else, enjoy your either regular or if you're in the US, your long weekend. But yeah, enjoy your afternoons, evenings, and nights. And Stepan, enjoy the rest of your Friday night as well. And everyone, I'll see you all next week.
Enjoy rest of the day and enjoy the weekend.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.